I'm sure you've heard the news lately.
Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League is a thoroughly frustrating game to play.
It really just boils down to more of the same AAA open world that we've seen for ages before.
There is a certain graphical and technological standard in the modern day that is simply not being met with this stuff.
Big AAA games, as of recently, have started to let people down. The reason for this is complicated and not something I'll really be talking about in this video, but the point is, it's hard to find a really good AAA game nowadays, and everywhere you go, you'll find videos like these. Because, let's be honest, not a lot of people stray too far away from their cycle of 2K annual releases and Modern Warfare reboots. But if you were to venture just a little further into the realm of indie games, you'd find something that's pretty much magic. Games that are being developed with passion. There's no need to explain to you how cool all of these are, but one of these games in particular has piqued my interest. It's not your ordinary game, and no matter how experimental or unique another video game might claim itself to be, I have a feeling that this game will never have the ability to be replicated. This game is called Outer Wilds. I played Outer Wilds about a year ago, and ever since then, I've struggled to fit the game into a coherent video essay / game review / lore deep dive. There are so many layers to this game, and it's always been a struggle to figure out how to describe it. The way the game unfolds and how you, the player, eventually learn mechanics is something that I kind of need to keep secret for people who are new to the game. Almost like a code of conduct, everybody who plays the game purposely never says anything about it except for how it's changed their life in some way. But if I want to get this off my chest and just talk about the game, I'll need to dive deeper. So, without further ado, let me show you why I think Outer Wilds is the best space game of all time. That pitch black part of the sky is space. You all have seen the sky thousands of times in your life, and it's a pretty common occurrence for everyone on Earth. But as much as we and the scientists around the world examine every minute detail of the night sky and the universe in general, we still don't know anything about space. It all feels incomprehensible and mysterious, which makes it so intriguing to so many people. Outer Wilds takes the feelings you might get from thinking about space and nails them one by one throughout the game. Ironically, at the beginning of Outer Wilds, you wake up next to a campfire, something that's not mysterious nor incomprehensible at all. You don't wake up in a space station, not in some alien mothership, not in an intergalactic war. No, you wake up next to a small campfire and your friend Slate, who's roasting some marshmallows nearby. This scenario is what many would describe as the hero's journey type of introduction. In a hero's journey story, almost all the time, the introduction takes place at a setting and time that's pretty familiar to the character. In Outer Wilds, for example, the player starts in an environment resembling Earth. You know, you've got campfires, marshmallows, trees, green grass, and blue water. From then on, you play through the game and it slowly starts to ramp up in otherworldliness, just like a hero's journey. But this is a space game, and in the first few minutes of Outer Wilds, many people might be confused by the art style alone. Houses are completely made out of wood, some villagers are cooking soup with bare-bone kitchenware, and some people are lounging in rocking chairs. The setting makes me feel like I'm about to go on a camping trip, not a space mission. But let's try comparing it to something like Starfield or No Man's Sky, for example. These games are both pretty fun in their own right, and have your run-of-the-mill spaceships and futuristic architecture. They're both pretty big staples in the space game genre too, but surprisingly, both of these games are missing something big. It's hard to put it into words, but let me try to explain. There are games out there that have a spark, something that simply ignites something in you whenever you play it. It doesn't have to immediately be because of gameplay, characters, visuals, or plot. It could be a convoluted mess of stuff from the game that just hits your emotions in a certain way. There are also games out there that don't have the spark. This doesn't immediately mean that these games are bad, but they just don't have it. The only problem is that something as grand as space itself needs to have a spark to work. Space is massive. All of it is infinite. Refusing to make an emotionally driven space game about those ideas is like trying to start a campfire using friction instead of the lighter right in front of you. In both No Man's Sky and Starfield's case, I just can't see that spark being there like Outer Wilds, and I think the rest of the gaming world could probably agree. That's where we return to Outer Wilds. Yeah, the spaceships you use in this game aren't entirely practical, nor do some of the planets and their features make all that much sense, but you can sense this game's charm. At the beginning of the game, after you've woken up and walked around a bit, you find yourself playing hide and seek with the village locals. And this isn't for no reason either. During hide and seek, you're simultaneously being taught how to use a tool called the signal scope. The same thing goes with a lot of other locations in the introduction. Once you visit the museum later on, you're taught about some of the more basic features of the game, while also being able to simply admire some of the cool exhibits like these metal balls that roll around according to the moon's gravity, or this quantum shard that disappears when you look away from it. I can blabber about how meaningful the introduction of the game is, but for the sake of time, let's start looking up, because once you've understood the basics and gotten into your ship for the first time, Outer Wilds enters into a league of its own.
Where do I go?
Hey, buddy, turn around. This thing here is a device called the ship log. Once you open it, you can see all the areas you've already explored, haven't yet explored, or haven't fully explored. In the ship log's rumor mode, you can see these destinations split outwards, creating multiple branches of objectives that you can follow in your own way, almost like a choose your own adventure book or an evidence board in a detective movie. It's your choice. You, the player, can decide what's considered a main quest and what's considered a side quest. The game doesn't decide for you, and it truly grants you the freedom to be Outer Wilds in whichever order you want. You see that cool-ass crystallized planet with a black hole in the center of it? Go on ahead and visit it. You can always visit Giant's Deep, a gas giant with a massive ocean and a family of tornadoes that circle the entire planet. There's Ember Twin, a barren desert planet with massive cave systems that hide its secrets. There's the Sun Station, the White Hole Station, Ash Twin, Quantum Moon, Timberhearth, and Hollow's Lantern, and... what the... In Outer Wilds, it's not just about exploring planets. You're also stuck in a time loop. Every 22 minutes, the sun explodes. You see a reel of your memories, and then you suddenly wake up at the exact spot where the game started, with no explanation. Once this has happened for the first time in your playthrough, that's when you'll know that this is where the game really begins.
Wait, what?
This isn't just about exploring space. You're trying to solve a mystery. The sun's supernova, the mysterious time loop you're stuck in. Your goal is to connect it all, and to do that, you'll need to explore the depths of the solar system, even the places others were desperately trying to hide. I'd like to mention that Outer Wilds never forgets to be horrifying during your playthrough. Never. When it comes to horror and other video games, there's always been a trend for how to scare the player. Ever since the popularity of Slender in 2012 and Five Nights at Freddy's in 2014, the horror gaming world has leaned heavily into the genre of mascot horror, a genre that very much relies on jump scares to be scary. Now, by no means do I plan on sitting here arguing that jump scares aren't horrifying. No! They're super scary, and I don't think I ever want to touch something like FNAF ever again because of that. But I do think there's an alternative approach that Outer Wilds makes good use of. It's an approach that I would even consider a little better. Silent Hill, Bioshock, Resident Evil, and Outer Wilds, these games are amazing and all take one common approach to make the player scared. That's atmosphere. In Silent Hill, the entire town is covered in fog. Everything is colorless, dull, and empty, really uplifting some of the more depressing tones of the game. Resident Evil is the same thing almost. Many settings are dark and secluded or separated from society, making you feel alone and almost powerless at times. In BioShock, you're stuck in a crumbling underwater city. Water floods through the walls and the atmosphere feels super claustrophobic, especially because cameras and turrets are literally everywhere in that game. Outer Wilds does a mixture of all of these. Claustrophobia, loneliness, and especially dread. And I mean like existential dread. The uncertainty of the universe is an ongoing theme throughout, and for good reason too. If any of you have ever really started to think about the massive scale of space and nature, you've at least once had a little anxiety about how the hell any of this works. Space is pretty scary, and Outer Wilds seems to take account of that. When it wants to, Outer Wilds can be terrifying. Space, nature, weird, warbly sounds. Those kinds of things give you goosebumps and excitement, but there's also one other part of this game that does the same thing, except this time it doesn't get you all jumpy. It's almost more disturbing than anything. On almost every planet, you'll come across ruins like these. In Outer Wilds, you learn a lot from an ancient, extinct alien civilization called the Nomai. Now, the clues you receive from the Nomai aren't necessarily from everyday items like pottery or tools or something else. The way you get clues from the Nomai is directly from their sources of communication. Since you have a translator that can read the Nomai language, you're able to learn almost every minute detail of the Nomai and their existence. You learn about how they weren't originally from the solar system, and that they were instead trying to find a mysterious signal, but got stuck here indefinitely. And you also learn that most out of anything, these guys were fearless. They were constantly experimenting and venturing throughout the system to find two key things. One, a way back home, and two, most important of all, the initial signal that led them here. The signal for the eye of the universe, which is something I'll talk about later. So I made the claim that whatever you learn from the Nomai can make you uneasy, but why would I make that claim? Well, look past the ancient message boards and the scrolls filled with lore, and you can get a hint of what actually happened to these people. Every Nomai skeleton is in a casual area. Some of them were lounging in chairs, some of them were doing chores, and some Nomai children were in class learning about space with their teacher. If everyone across these planets died, why are there skeletons in these spots? The best assumption is that it was without warning. But there is an actual reason. There's one pattern that resonates with every one of these places. You just need to look closer. These rocks are everywhere, and not just out of random coincidence. On every planet, these silverish blue crystals called ghost matter are scattered across the landscape in random splotches, with some of the crystal clusters even forming inside of Nomai workshops and homes. Whenever you walk near these clusters, your suit will warn you that ghost matter is nearby, because once you do enter a cluster, you burn to death. What ends up being so interesting about these ghost matter clusters is that, as I just said, you can find them in almost every ancient ruin. So the question ends up being, why would any advanced civilization allow death crystals into their homes? Well, this question becomes the driving force behind your curiosity for a little bit, until you eventually find this thing. This comet is called the Interloper, and it's called the Interloper for a good reason. If you search up the definition of the word interloper, you'd see it be defined as a person that interferes in a situation or a place where they don't really belong. That same definition applies to the name of this comet. Looking at the map, you see something different about the comet compared to every other object in the solar system pretty much immediately. Its orbit is way off. Instead of the orbit path being in a regular circle, the comet goes in this weird oval shape, where at one point it's the object farthest away from the sun in the solar system, and at another point it gets dangerously close to the sun. It's irregular, signaling that it's not originally from here, and the game makes that extremely clear once you walk inside. According to the notes left behind by dead Nomai, its core was experiencing a dangerously high amount of inner pressure. As we can see, thousands of years later, that built up pressure probably amounted to something not very good. What was originally stored in a foreign chunk of ice and rock eventually spread across the entire solar system, even into some of the darkest corners like Dark Bramble and the Sunless City, and even this. At first glance, this place might be a bit confusing to people. It's not a moon, it's not a planet, it's not even a black hole if any of you thought so. It's called the Stranger, and the secrets you find inside bring a whole new perspective as well. Similar to the comet, the Stranger is foreign. It's not from the solar system, but there's something different about it. A lot different.
What the fuck?
What?
It's a fully fledged world. It's filled with trees, cliffs, water, and evidence of another civilization. A civilization that's been on a long hiatus, because everywhere you go, it's empty. Fortunately, every building in the Stranger gives some sort of clue as to what's happened. The civilization that once resided in the Stranger used slide reels as a form of record keeping, similar to how the Nomai used their message boards. You can get a light source like a lantern, and then a slide reel, and use them both on a projector to learn more about the Stranger's role in the solar system. Soon enough, you'll realize what the purpose of this world was. The Stranger and its civilization are exact opposites of the Nomai. Rather than being fearless and exploring space to figure out its secrets, the Stranger was meant to act as a shield from the mysterious and unknown. Some of the inhabitants built signal blockers to prevent any other species from finding the Eye of the Universe. They feared what it could do. They saw visions of what could happen if anybody entered the Eye. Death, destruction, and probably the end of the universe. Nobody wanted to interact with it. That is until you find out about one particular Stranger inhabitant. Instead of trying to block anybody else from ever finding the Eye of the Universe, he turned off the blocker and released the eye signal for a brief moment. Even one brief moment of somebody releasing the signal meant a cruel punishment. Nobody here was ever going to allow the Eye of the Universe to be found, but that meant that they were never able to return home. They needed to keep watch. So, in order to cope, like what many of us do today, they tried escaping from reality. They made a simulation. After time had passed, reality caught up with them, and those who decided to reminisce forever in a simulation of their homeworld died in the real world. The prisoner who tried to release the signal in the first place was stuck in the simulation until you show up, actually. Neither of you can speak to each other, but as you've seen throughout this new world, communication is visual, and what he shows you connects everything you experienced previously in the game. The Nomai, the Eye of the Universe, the Ghost Matter, all of it is connected. All of the message boards you ever read from the Nomai, all of the slide reels you examined from the Stranger, and all the decisions made by other people to deal with the uncertainty of the universe lead back to you. A simple adventurer that, not too long ago, was just starting as the rookie astronaut. But now that you've connected everything, the only thing left to do is face the unknown. The Eye. Some had done everything in their power to avoid it, and others did everything in their power to visit it. Either way, all of the information you gather throughout Outer Wilds has led you here, to the ending of the game. The ending of Outer Wilds has so much meaning and depth behind it that I wouldn't be able to fit it into this video alone, but I'll give something that is arguably more important. Throughout the majority of the game, you remain in cluelessness and you're fearful of everything. You try to uncover clues that might be key to preventing the sun's supernova or even the end of the universe, but there isn't a key. Throughout the entirety of the game, you're trying to prevent coming face to face with death. Themes like death, both in a video game like Outer Wilds or real life, are just something that a person has to accept. Some things are out of your control, and that's alright. If you look closely at a certain part of the game, you see this message pointed out pretty clearly. I won't specify where exactly to find this, but if you go to this burnt down temple in the DLC, you'll find this painting that has fortunately survived the flames. The painting contains a plant growing out of a skull. More specifically, the plant seems to be some sort of dandelion, where the seeds are galaxies and the flower is the eye of the universe. Many people were afraid of the eye. They saw the visions, death, destruction, chaos, but whoever may have painted this, they knew that whenever this death happens, eventually new life can sprout from it. Death is represented by the skull, the eye of the universe is represented by the flower, and the little galaxies represent newly formed seeds. Whatever scary end to the universe that may happen due to the eye is just part of a cycle, and it's all necessary for life to continue. That's the message that Outer Wilds attempts to send, and because of that message, I would like to believe, along with many other people, that Outer Wilds is probably the best space game of all time.